Hi, Andreas.
Hi, Engin.
Welcome back again. We have actually met a few weeks ago. Can you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. And then I'm Andreas. I'm 27 years old. I'm from Germany. And for the past 1.5 years, I've been training with professional athletes in neurofeedback. My own background is in neuroscience. So I did a research master in Maastricht in Cognitive Neuroscience. And afterwards, I started working with a company called Neuro11, where we've been training professional athletes with neurofeedback.
During your time in Neuro11, where you had important clients, how do you describe your experience with neurofeedback and EEG usage?
What the most interesting part is how you can compare different sports with each other, how you can get the experience from golf and take it into pole vaulting, because what we're talking about are always routines or standard situations, like in football when you have a penalty kick, or surf and tennis. Golf and shooting are always routines. The whole sport is a routine.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, neurofeedback is a great tool to make mental performance measurable. So in the end, what you have is real data about your focus, how focused you are, and therefore it's interesting how you can optimize the focus in individuals, but also that there's not one way to optimize the focus in everyone.
The sports and maybe teams or names that you worked, how did you help them? For example, let's start with football if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've been in touch of helping Liverpool, which I think has been has been covered also by the media a lot, and Hamburg, the football club in Germany. Whereas for me, I was mostly involved training actually on the pitch in Hamburg and not in Liverpool. But what you usually have is like sessions before or after practice, depending what the coach gives you. It's always dependent on the coach, where you take a player and it takes like 20 minutes, where you have like a 2 to 5 minute setup, where you set up the EEG, and then you go on the pitch and practice either penalties or free kicks or corners. And the idea is this moment before you run up, right, where you're standing still. This is where your focus comes in. And what the science also backs up is the more focused you are, the more precise your movements are. And it should transfer into a better penalty, for example, or more accurate golf shot. So we've been trying to work on the different routines, on the timing when you start to run up. And the good thing is about neurofeedback, you can either do it visually. So when you're in a lab, maybe you've seen this, you are connected to an EEG, and the more focused you are, the higher a plane flies. Or they are actually, you can compete against other people where there are animals running on a track, and whoever of us is more focused, the animal runs faster. And what you can do on the pitch, where you need to be able to do your sport, is get auditory feedback. So as soon as you reach your individual level that we can define by setting the threshold, as soon as you reach that level, there is a noise, there's a sound, and then you can shoot. It's the most auditory and visual are the most common neurofeedback tools that you see in also all the research papers. And if you're standing in front of the penalty and you hear that noise, you know it's time to go. I'm in focus. And this is how, through repetitions, you can try and improve your routine, like the timing when you start to run up, and sometimes it's very detailed. Sometimes how many steps do you look at the ball? Do you look at the goalkeeper? This is like where the coaching comes from, in the coaching experience, where you try and figure out how to optimize details usually in your routine.
So it's like if a player or his own coach tries to do it with an EEG device, it will probably fail.
It depends on the coach, I would say. It's not, if you don't have a background at all in neuroscience or any idea, it probably won't work really well.
I think it's really like applicable to many different areas, starting with football, in tennis, serves, in golf, and also it can be applicable in poker, where you have to really make a tough decision, where you need to be focused sharply. Well, also in esports. And what do you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is, pressure is everywhere, even outside sport. Like we're talking about business or surgeons. I think what makes it the most interesting is that it gives you a toolbox where when the pressure is high, there's stress, maybe you're injured, maybe fans are screaming at you, like we've seen this weekend at the Ryder Cup, where the fans have been constantly screaming and harassing the European golfers. Like, are you able to perform then? Because everyone can perform when everything's running smoothly, you're in practice, or you're leading 5-0 in a game. That's easy. But what if it's the deciding penalty in the final? What if, you don't feel well, you're stressed? This is then where neurofeedback gives you basically a toolbox to understand your mental states. What different mental states do I have? And you recognize them, and then you know your approach, how to get yourself back into the zone, back into your focus. And I think this is where the application, you can make the application in everywhere.
Important question. How do you simulate, like Liverpool taking the penalty kick in the Champions League final? How can you simulate it in a training?
I mean, you can never simulate the real thing. You have a nearer transfer. So you can create pressure situations in practice where if you don't hit the shot, then your team gets punished, for example, or different pressure situations in golf where you have to make 5 out of 7 putts from a certain distance in order to be successful. Otherwise, either you get a reward or you're getting punished, whatever.
How do you see an athlete's approach to high pressure moments transform after training with EEG with you? Like before and after picture. For example, you for the first time start working with a golfer or a tennis player, and after 3 months, what changes?
I think there is more awareness about situations when you're rushing, when you're stressed, when you're under pressure, and to take yourself out of the situation and be more calm. Like I've been working quite closely with a professional golfer, for example, and there has been phases in the beginning where he went to a tournament and he did well until a certain point, and then there was a delay and he became impatient, for example. And after working with him for a bit and just trying to tell him, like, look, you always have your routine. So no matter the delay, no matter the timing, you know when to pick this up. You know your time, when you can focus again. After a while, he had his best tournament. The feedback I got from him was that he felt very calm. This focus was there, but he was physically relaxed. And this is exactly where you want to get the sweet spot between being mentally very focused, but physically relaxed.
I like it.
So yeah, this has been one of the good experiences I had with an athlete, where I definitely saw an improvement practicing with him.
And can you tell an example for the same thing for football, for example?
Biggest thing in football when you have penalties is the run-up. There has been always big discussions about when you watch. I don't know if you watch the female think it was the European champions. I hope I'm not saying anything wrong. Where there's been the French player, almost running up 90 degrees to the penalty spot, and she missed that shot, and everyone was like, "What was that kind of for a run up?" And we also had players when we started working with them where they had like a strange approach to like biomechanically, where you're thinking, does this make sense? But you need to figure it out first. Maybe it works for them. Maybe they hit 10 out of 10. So you first need to watch and look if with the neurofeedback, does it help them? And for example, one player in Hamburg, he had a very different approach before we came, and we changed that approach in a way more simple way, and he became a better penalty shooter. So there's been and he learned. I also saw, you can see on the numbers, you saw his focus increase. And
I will ask a very simple question. For example, in golf, it only depends on you. In darts, it depends on you. But in penalties, yes, it doesn't depend on you only. Even if you make the best shot in the world, a keeper can still save it. Like, how do you explain if such a question comes from a coach of a football team?
Yeah, of course, you can always shoot the perfect penalty and the keeper can make the perfect save. So there's always the possibility. And if you know the stats, 1 out of 4 penalties is not in, right? So, but what you can see is how well was the penalty shot, because the likelihood that the keeper will make a save or needs to make a perfect save just to save your penalty is then very different compared to you shoot unprecise. But yeah, sometimes maybe you have bad luck, maybe you hit the post, maybe you hit the crossbar. It doesn't mean it was a bad penalty. Is in sports also luck is involved, and some things you can't control, like other people. So this is probably what I would say. But what you can always control is your own approach, your own run up, your own focus, your own execution.
So it's actually about that. Like, you can only check the movements of the keeper, but in the end, you cannot decide how well he's jumping and stuff. You still need to focus on what you can control. Can we say that neurofeedback is kind of like creating the roadmap for athletes to be in the zone?
Roadmap is a nice word. I always thought about more as a toolbox, because there are different situations, different pressure situations also that can exist in competition. Then you have different approaches on you know yourself better and what mental state you're in, and from what mental state you're currently in, how do I get into the zone or into the flow state? It could also be the other way around, that you're way too relaxed, way too chill, and basically not in the zone at all, but not because you're too excited, but to relax. And then also you need to have a way or a road to go to become more aware and get more in the zone.
How do you see that? See that an athlete is too relaxed through neurofeedback?
Oh, this is what you measure, right? You measure, I guess most people have heard about the brain waves, like alpha, beta, gamma, delta, theta. When you measure neurofeedback, you see all those frequencies measured in real time with an EEG. Of course, there are different tools, but the EEG is the most applicable one to measure it in real time. So if you're very aroused and emotional, the high frequencies usually are very high. Whereas if we sleep, for example, very, very low frequencies like delta are most predominant in your brain, in areas of your brain. And it's also where the coaching experience comes in, right? You look at the screen and you see the frequencies, which is why it's helpful to have a background in neuroscience, because you understand what's going on. You can then talk. Also, you need to talk to the athlete, right? You can always guess. You have the screen. You
confirm it with
the athlete, like discuss with them, like, hey, it looks a bit like you're very relaxed. What's going on? It's like, oh yeah, I don't care. I'm chilling. Like, okay, maybe let's try and be more active, or the other way around, you see that they're like the focus is fluctuating a lot, and they're all over the place basically. And then you go to him to them and you're like, what's going on? And then they start talking to you like, oh, I'm afraid of shooting over the goal. And this is then where you also start, where it gets more into the psychology side of coaching, where you talk about, okay, the fears, or maybe they have different stress that's going on in their mind, and so on. And there's not only one frequency you can train. It's not about only focus. You can also train to relax with the lower frequencies. For example, you can train to suppress higher frequencies.
How is it with the players? Do they always try to cooperate as much as they can, or sometimes do they resist? Because I can imagine some players not believing in it, but their coach or their team made them do it.
Yeah, exactly. This is usually what happens in a football club, where the decision is made by the coach that they want the neurofeedback, and then the players are getting told, look, this is what you got to do now. I would always try and approach these players by just telling them, give it a chance. What's the worst that can happen, right? You can always walk away and be like, well, this was shit. I'm not going to do this anymore again. But more often than not, they recognize quite quickly the benefit, because as soon this kind of coaching is different than me telling you, look, you need to be precise. You need to be concentrated. This is what you hear a lot from coaches, like, you just need to focus more. How? Like, how do I focus more? Sometimes, yeah, there are players who are not convinced, and then they don't want to do it, and that's fine. Like, you can't convince everyone. But I think for the majority of players I've met, they saw the benefit, and then they kept working.
How much time is it needed to start seeing the benefits? And the benefits, are they long-lasting? Plus, for example, let's say players or athletes are working with you once every month or every 2 weeks, and after that, in the middle, do they have to train?
Yeah, usually it depends on your schedule. Usually, the best case would be you train once a week, you go to your competition on the weekend, you come back the next week, and we talk. What happened in the competition, what worked, what didn't work, and then we continue with the practice. But in reality, because of the tight schedules, usually you're looking into 4 to 6 weeks, every 4 to 6 weeks of practicing with the players, and then it's up to them.
What do you think? Is it like if you make a cost performance evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, the return of investment is always hard to measure with mental performance, because it's not a leg that is healing. I do believe the return of investment is definitely there. I do believe, though, you see more consistent good execution under pressure when you practice with neurofeedback, which is also why I want to now, with my own company, not only focus on elite athletes, but also more on like children or youth players. If you're ambitious and you're not a professional athlete, but an amateur who's very ambitious, it can also help you.
Yeah, it's a bit sad that it's not measurable, in the sense that, like, it doesn't have KPIs.
I mean, what you can see is, because it is measurable, the mental performance, you can see how the focus has in an individual, how that has been increasing or stabilizing, which is important. It's not only increasing your focus, also being able to hold your focus for a longer time. And this you can measure. And this you can't compare between individuals, of course, but within an individual over the course of time, you can definitely at least usually see, like, look, the focus increased, the value, or it was less fluctuating. If that correlates with that the performance are also going up, then that's hard to disentangle. But you can definitely tell more about that they're more focused. And usually the players, they come back and say and talk about being more calm, being more in the zone than they used to. So this is how you get the feedback of, okay, it's working what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Andreas, I asked everything that I prepared, more or less. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I'm happy with our conversation. I hope people watch this and look more into neurofeedback, and that they can always contact me if they want coaching or more information.
Thank you so much for your time.